If you've been buying groceries lately, you've probably noticed that the prices are changing. And if that has made you wonder, well, how do I make sure that my finances will be enough for what my family needs in the future? Then you've come to the right place. Because if you're wondering not only about groceries, but also possibly wrestling with having to have enough for retirement or your kids' college, or maybe even having a little bit extra to help aging parents, or to be able to just help others, then this video is going to help you. So years ago, I remember trying to figure out all of this stuff too. I was wondering, well, how am I going to do 4 college funds, plus my retirement, plus even make sure my spouse is going to have a decent retirement, all at the same time as a stay-at-home mom? And then it hit me. How did past generations have, on a single income, be able to buy a house, a car, and still have something left over for a vacation? And it seemed like it wasn't as stressful. But nowadays, even with families that have 2 incomes, sometimes even more, it still feels like a bit of a struggle. So, if it was possible back then, why does it feel so much harder now? Because I would bet that if you're here, you're probably doing everything you were told to do with money. Am I right? I don't think you're like frivolously just throwing money around and buying things that you don't need and lighting money on fire. If you're saving, if you're investing, you're making those smart moves, why aren't we getting ahead? And if you want to know that answer, I am glad you're here. Hello, I'm Kathy, and welcome to my channel. Here is where we talk about faith, family, and finances to create a life in abundance. Today, we're going to reveal why it's been so hard to get ahead, even for those who have been doing all the right things. By the end of this video, I think you'll see something about money and your savings that you may not have seen before, even though you've probably seen hints of it. However, it's all going to come together. And once you do see it clearly, it makes it so much easier to find a solution and fix the problem. So when I was younger and thinking about my finances, I always thought, well, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I would have enough. And I worked hard. I got a good job. But as life has a habit of doing, it didn't turn out the way I expected. So I had studied to be a pharmacist, and I genuinely loved that career. And then I had kids. And because of the situation we were in, I had to stay home to make sure that they were okay because they had special conditions that we just didn't feel comfortable sending them off to somebody else to take care of. And that wasn't an easy decision. Never thought I would end up making that decision, especially for so long. Because it brings a dilemma, doesn't it? Because especially if you had planned on having an income, planned on that income helping your family, for you to suddenly decide, oh, there's no more paycheck over there, you start wondering, well, can I still afford the things that I wanted to be able to give my kids? But on the other side of the coin, it also feels like it's not hunky-dory either, because if you stick to the career and the paycheck, you can provide more, but then sometimes you wonder, what am I missing out on as time with my kids? So it can feel like a no-win situation. I wonder if you've ever felt like that. And at the time, I didn't have an answer. It didn't feel like I would win either way. But at the time, the decision was kind of made for me. So I did the best that I could. Took care of the kids, dealt with no income, have a husband. So he was taking care of our daily expenses. But there was a bit of a difference. So I made that decision that so many women make to stay home. But because I had always intended to try to help my family financially, I did my best to try to make up for that lost paycheck. So I started learning how to invest. I was trying to figure out what more I can learn and what more I could do because at 3 a.m., when the kids were finally asleep, at least that was something I could do. So I saved even more. I invested. I tried to research stocks. I learned about bonds. I studied real estate, all of it. I also met with my financial advisor regularly, and year after year, I was told we were on track. But over time, something started telling me that something was off because it never felt that way. It never felt like we were doing really, really well. And then 2008 happened. I don't know if you remember investing at that time, but after I had been investing for almost a decade, in 2008, all of my investments, all of it, were cut by about half. And then it took another decade just to get back to even, not ahead, just back to where I started. After almost 20 years of investing. Have you ever worked so hard at something only to end up exactly back where you began as if none of your effort did anything? It was so frustrating. That was a painful experience. And though I hope that it didn't happen to any of you, I know that some of you out there know exactly what I went through because you felt it too. And that experience, although it wasn't great, did do something good. It actually pushed me to the next step, to the one that finally started making a difference. So after spending that decade building and then the next decade just trying to get back what I had lost, that experience made me face a question that I don't know if I was just too naive to see it or not or just not paying attention. Or maybe I was just believing the story that was so convenient to believe at the time. And it starts with this question. If I was doing everything I was supposed to do, I was saving, I was investing, I was being smart with my money, maybe you have too. Question was, why wasn't it working? After more than a decade, I would have thought that something would have worked. And searching for that answer led me to the question that changed how I saw money completely. And that is, where was I actually storing the value of all that effort, all that work that I had? Because it isn't just about the number. It isn't just about storing that number $100. Because that $100 today, years from now, doesn't buy you what $100 does today, does it? And that's the thought that changed everything for me. Because what if money isn't really just a number? What if it's an amount of stored effort? Your time, your effort, your work, your sacrifice gets converted into something you're trying to hold. That we have been taught to believe is a bill, is a number in a bank account. Trying to store the value of that effort into the future. And we would want to be able to buy the same amount of stuff in the future as we do today. But is that what happens? Because if you're buying groceries now, if you think about how much groceries were 5 years ago, can you buy the same amount for the same amount of dollars today? So in which case, if you just told me, no, I don't, I used to buy much more for the same amount, then you've experienced what I experienced. And that is that our money is not storing our value. It's slowly leaking away. Why? Most of us never think to ask about that. We just assume that if we're saving responsibly, the effort is there. So our value should be safe. But if you've seen grocery prices, if you've seen any prices, you know that it's changed. And once you start asking questions like that, you start seeing something different. And that's when I started finding a real answer. And here's the answer. Even though it's not a secret, and you've probably heard about it before, but people don't tend to highlight it. And they tend to kind of act like it's no big deal, but it's inflation. Inflation. Every year, the things we need start costing more. So if we're working and saving, the same way families did 50 years ago, like generations ago, but actually everything costs more now, that's why one income isn't enough. And that's why sometimes two incomes today may almost just be enough. But you kind of still feel like you're fighting for that, right? And then there's still less left over. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a leak at the bottom. You keep putting in your effort, you're working harder, you're trying to save more, but it doesn't feel like it fills. It feels like it just drains out sometimes before you even get to use it. So all of your hard work still feels like you're getting left behind. And I don't want that for you. And I didn't want that for me, and I didn't want it for my kids. That's why I went searching for a better answer. And I want you to know that it's not because you did anything wrong. You actually did what you were supposed to do. You're working hard. You're trying to save for your family. You're trying to protect them. And that's why you're doing so much. But the system that most of us are living in, it was actually built this way. It was built to leak the value that where we store money. No matter how hard we try, no matter how much we work or save, that keeps happening. But there's a different path. There's another way. And I know it works because I never went back to full-time work. It's been more than 18 years now, and I've been home with my kids. I've had a part-time job, but never full-time work. And because of what I started seeing and understanding about money, I was able to do something with less work that I couldn't have done in that old system. I now have 4 kids. I built 4 college funds and my retirement, and I'm working on retiring my spouse. All at the same time, those got built, and in less time than it would have taken to just fill one of those buckets the old way in that old system. It's not a magic trick. It's not luck. It's something that you can do, even on your own. But so few people understand what's happening with money, how it works, and therefore what the real answer actually is. And that's why so many of us end up feeling stuck, because it's not something that they teach us in school. It's not something that they even teach us in college. It's not even anything that HR really tells us or helps us understand. Even though the answer, honestly, has been hiding in plain sight. And I want to tell you the answer because I don't want anyone to be left behind. I want to take you to the next video where we'll walk through exactly what I used and how I was able to catch up and was able to close the gap for good. So let me add a little bit to this. Something I've noticed about men and women, and especially with money. Men tend to talk with other men about money. And that way, they can, like a group, start learning from each other and building wealth, networks, and relationships. That's often how they learn because we're human and women do the same thing. But when women get together, we don't really tend to talk about that kind of stuff, do we? We don't really tend to talk to each other about money or finances, or it almost seems taboo, like politics. So unless we're going to classes about finances and we become a finance major and, I don't know, somehow have a connection to money managers who can tell us these things, how are we supposed to get smarter about something we all need? Something that's as important as finances. If we don't even have anyone to talk to about it. And that's a big part of why I do this. I want women to have a place where we actually can get together to talk about money, to learn together, and to get better at this, not alone and not guessing, but together, because that's what women do. That's a strength that many women have, that when we can talk about it with a confident friend, we become better. And that's why you have friends. And that's why you are a good friend. Am I right? So if you've ever quietly wondered whether you missed your chance or whether you somehow got behind, or you're like, well, what do I do now? How do I catch up from the years where finances wasn't working for me, for the years when I was investing, but it didn't work out the way I thought? Part of that is the problem of believing you don't have access to what you need to, or you won't have the ability, or that somehow you're too late. And none of those are true. And I want to prove it to you because I'm no finance guru. I have no finance background. I have no tech background. But I learned how to do this by myself, and my financial advisor did not help. So if you want to build something for your future and you're willing to step out and say, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to try, I want to understand what's happening so that I can do better, then I want to connect with you. I want to help you. I want to tell you what I did and help you catch up without you having to wait another decade to do this. So if you're ready to find out exactly what that different path is and exactly how I used it to catch up and close that gap for good, to finally get those big finance goals done, then click the link in the description and let me know where I can send that video to you. It's called the catch-up method. It's where I walk you through what I learned to figure out how to catch up for investing years that seemed lost. It will open your eyes to what's really happening with money and how to fix that leaky bucket, how to kind of get out of that system. I don't want anyone to be left behind anymore. So if you're wanting a way out of that system, then please click the link. I hope to see you there.